Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. Well, it's a big day in the United States as Donald Trump prepares for his inauguration to become the 47th President of the United States. Well, it's rumoured he may be visiting India as well as China as one of his first overseas trips, so we'll take a look at just what's going on. We'll also take another look at the devastating wildfires again and those providing support for the frontline firefighters. And with the release of two major controversial films, Punjab 95 and Emergency, we discuss the impact and these widespread boycotts now spreading globally against the India-promoted propaganda. All this and more on today's show. But joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our amazing viewers out there. We see you back here on YouTube, but hey, the bright side is we're not on TikTok where it can be interrupted at any moment. So stick with us, subscribe, and invite your friends. We'd love to see our numbers climb.
Indeed, a completely TikTok-free programme as always. And James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And yes, of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at those of your great comments which have been filling up below the video. So thank you as always for those. Right, James, let's get things underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
As we know, the fires in Los Angeles are still creating havoc and loss for so many people there. Over 12,000 homes, structures, businesses have been devastated there. The firefighters are working night and day in order to try to keep a handle on the fire's containment and to extinguish them. With that happening, there's been an increased call for the support and further recognition and help for the frontline firefighters that come from local prisons. Now, in California, as well as other parts of the U.S., since the end of World War II, they've been using inmates to help with firefighting efforts, whether that is in the mountains or as we see throughout greater Los Angeles. And that's been an issue that's been going on for years. Now, at this time, there's over 1,000 firefighters from local jails that are on the front lines in California, helping to really get a handle on these devastating fires. Recently, a music artist who is known around the globe, John Legend, paid a visit to some of these firefighters from the local prison camps to not only support them and show appreciation, but also to lobby for better conditions. A lot of it, these firefighters, when they are out on these lines, are there for weeks at a time, sometimes dispatched 24 hours a day, just going at incredible paces, but they're only making between $5 and $10 per day. They get $1 bonus per day from CAL FIRE when they're on active zones. But we're first going to take a look at the visit of John Legend, and then we'll discuss that a bit more about this rare group of firefighters, and many times underappreciated group, I should say. And we'll talk more about that when we come back after this quick video here, Angus.
Right now we're in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. I'm with Washington Ridge, Camp 44, and we're on the Houston Fire.
I think everybody in the state, everybody in the country realizes how important you are, especially now.
We just wanted to highlight it and thank you and make sure we publicize what you're doing and also advocate for you so that the state continues to take care of you and shows its gratitude beyond, this moment.
This group right here, crews you see 3 and 5, like, we're real unique compared to a lot of other crews because before this, like you said, we were in jail cells.
Yeah.
Like, without these two right here and the opportunity they gave us, we wouldn't be here right now.
There are things that all of us can do as citizens to advocate for better conditions for you, for more access to programs like this, and making sure that when you come back home, that you have opportunities waiting for you.
So as you can see there, the firefighters are making very minimal wages for very high risk positions. They are the ones that tend to get put out in the riskier zones where the bulldozers can't get to, where the rock faces and the conditions are very hazardous to not only their immediate health at the time, but it also carries with it long-term health risks that are associated with traditional firefighters. They get recognition, but when they are inmates, they don't have that long-term coverage or that long-term safety net should they develop any type of illness later on due to the airborne particulates, the carcinogens, and other things that are in the air that they are breathing. Now, the U.S. government estimates that it's approximately $2 billion per year that inmate workers produce worth of goods and commodities, and that goes into the economy. And again, they are paid much less than the workers in the standard society. With that, it's called inmate servitude, and it's something that's been a hot button topic for years because of the fact that the U.S. prison system is such a cesspool in many areas, and the risks, the dangers, the gang activity, all of these things play into an inmate's mental health and their mind when they figure it's safer to be facing destructive and potentially deadly forest fires than it is sitting in a cell. And so that is really, looking at whether it truly is voluntary or if it is a better alternative than what some people call torture and conditions that are in breach of international law. So this really is a major issue that's being taken up also by Governor Newsom and now some celebrities with the predominance of these firefighters in the local media and the international media. They're trying to get things such as additional pay for them because, again, they're only making $5 to $10 a day plus that big $1 extra if they're on the lines. So the other benefits to them is that in many cases, they receive between 1 and 2 days off of their sentence for each day that they're on the fire lines. And then they also get the ability, when they are released from prison, they can go and work at seasonal firefighting jobs or volunteer firefighting jobs. But ironically, they are not allowed to be hired by counties and municipalities for firefighting positions after incarceration. This has to do with their felonies. Even if they are completely unrelated to the position, they are required to pass the security clearance and the vulnerable persons clearance for them to get their EMT certification, which is a requirement for most firefighters. There is several bills in different movements happening to try and make it easier for inmates to get their records expunged if they served on these firefighting teams and served time at the firefighting camps. But again, this is something that could be something they apply for if it gets approved. But again, there's no guarantee. A judge can, make their decision one way or the other. So it doesn't guarantee that. But given the risk that these individuals are putting their lives on the line to save the lives of others, many of them have absolutely no hesitation and no remorse in doing so because they feel like they are giving back to the community. They feel like they are a part of something productive and something that gives them a purpose. And that really is what corrections should be all about. It should be about giving them job skills, giving them a sense of purpose, giving them a sense of belonging, giving them a sense that they are a part of a bigger community. And when you start to look at those factors in terms of recidivism rates, it's going to reduce the likelihood of reoffending. Now, one of the sheriffs, and we won't name the sheriff, but we will say that this one basically called out the state and Newsom as well as others that are advocating for better conditions and better futures for these firefighters, saying that the state is getting rid of essentially free labor, and he calls them out on that. He also went on and he was quoted as saying, and I'm going to read this just to make sure I get it exactly as he stated it. If the state kept more people in prison and were not so concerned about releasing all of these inmates, they would have plenty of people for fire crews. So there are certain sheriffs and certain communities that see this as a forced, basically that it's a slave labor, and that we should incarcerate people at a higher rate and keep them incarcerated for the simple fact that they can exploit these inmates. And that is just the wrong attitude and mentality to be approaching corrections with. The whole idea of corrections is to correct behavior, move them towards being productive members of society, help them to reunite with families, help them to be better parents, better brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, whatever the case is, and shouldn't be just looked at as a free labor force. And that, I think, is something that people such as the musician there, John Legend, and others are advocating for, and that is more humane and respectful treatment of inmates in Angus.
Yes, I've actually always been a very strong advocate of using prisoners for social benefit. And when somebody commits a crime, they are obviously punished, as they should be under the law. And when I see the incarcerated being used as firefighters, I have to say, from my personal perspective, I think this is a very good thing to see this. Yeah, they're not earning a lot of money, but ultimately, don't forget, these guys have committed crimes. They are to be punished. And of course, when people commit a crime and they are punished through the judiciary, there are two elements to this. Of course, there is an element of punishment, which of course they have to suffer. That's all about suffering. That is what a punishment is about by definition. But there is also an element of rehabilitation. And this, I believe, is as important as the punishment, is because it does society no good whatsoever if offenders become repeat offenders, this recidivism, as it's called. And if there is a way to rehabilitate offenders, then absolutely everything must be done to encourage offenders to rehabilitate so they don't become repeat offenders. Now, of course, unfortunately, due to human nature and genes, there are those in our society who will just forever be offenders. And for whatever reason that they are built, that is what they will do. And there is no rehabilitation. For those people, then that's it. Unfortunately, the punishment is the only element of that can be used. Right. But for a large percentage, I don't know what percentage that is, there is a chance to rehabilitate these people. And I think it is actually a very, very good thing that societies, and we do it to a limited degree here in the UK, not as much as in the US, and I know the US are very good on this, is that they do use their prisoners for all sorts of general social benefits, and of course in this case firefighters. I remember working in the Gulf of Mexico many, many years ago offshore, and I was on a vessel that was crewed by prisoners and ex-prisoners, and I have to say I was a little bit nervous being the only sort of incarcerated person on that boat, but actually I have to say they're all a great bunch of people and they took great care of me. But it did give me an insight into this social attitude that the US has in terms of trying to use their prisoners for social benefit as part of a rehabilitation process. And I genuinely think on balance it works. Now, of course, there are the liberal critics out there saying you can't exploit these people. It's forced labour, it's slave labour. Well, my answer to that is a little bit more right-wing of that. It's, look, these guys have broken the law. They should be punished. But as part of that, to bring them back into society, we are using them in roles that actually not just gives back to the society from which they have taken, but actually is in many cases training them, is giving them that self-worth, that self-discipline, that self-administration. They are learning skills, they're learning to take care of themselves, they are learning things that they can then take forward as they re-enter society, hopefully as good citizens, and then help them get a job. And yes, of course, there is the stigma and the problem of having a criminal record, etc., etc. That is another issue that does need to be addressed. But ultimately, I think things like this, if you're a school failure, you've got no qualifications, you've basically been a complete loser in life for whatever sad reasons that cause that happen to many people, but you end up in a situation like this and you become essentially a trained firefighter, think of the benefits that has done to that individual. And I've seen this in the army, where I've seen young men from the boys, basically from the most poorest, impoverished backgrounds, who come from terrible backgrounds, whose families are career criminals. Literally, I've seen this firsthand. Whose brothers have been stealing cars or breaking into houses all their lives. But these lads join the army, and within a year or two, they have literally turned their lives around. They are taught these sorts of skills. They find self-worth. They learn self-discipline. They learn to pick themselves up and build a life for themselves and take responsibility for their lives. And I think this is an element. So if this can be encouraged in the legal system, I'm absolutely all for it. Yes, there are problems with it. It's not a perfect system, but I think the net benefit, James, the net element of this is a benefit. I think it is positive. I think this, in reality, is a very good thing.
Absolutely. But I do think that they have to look at what the long-term impacts are. And therefore, I think that because they qualify as volunteer firefighters or seasonal firefighters, I don't see why they don't open it up more for them to actually build it as a career where they can have a job security, where they can have benefits and that. And again, keep in mind that they are very well screened. It depends on offenses. It depends on how much time they have. There's a lot of different reasons that they're picked. It's not just because they sign up and they get to go outside of the prison walls. So a lot of it has to do, like rapists, and there's a lot of different things that would prohibit anybody from registering onto this program. So of course, public safety has to be first and foremost. But I just think that there has to be more opportunity for them once they get outside of the walls of the prison, if they've already been risking their lives to protect life, property, and environment. I think let's give them more opportunities when they get out, and get them working, get them back in positive positions in the community, get them paying taxes. It's a benefit all the way around, I think, Angus, and So with that, though, let's continue with more government stuff. But this time it is the inauguration of Trump. And he is now set to become the 47th president of the United States of America. And of course, he kind of had that break in between, but he is back, and some say better than ever, others say scarier than ever. So I'll leave that up to each person to decide. But the real question in terms of a lot of people on the international scene is what it's going to mean for foreign policy, for foreign relations, and just a basic common sense approach to a lot of things, including the big demand that Trump has come forward with for tariffs. Now, we've seen that India has actually been kind of flying under the radar for the most part when it comes to tariffs. And this is, going to be an interesting year to watch, because when Trump was last in office, he actually was very successful in courting and bringing in a lot of investors with billions and billions of dollars from India. So he built a lot of friendships, a lot of business relationships and such within the country. And now, as you can see, some of those individuals that he met during his last term have become very dear to him and have scored the much coveted event tickets to not only the inauguration ceremonies, but also a bunch of the pre-ceremony and pre-inauguration events, including a very, very exclusive VIP candlelit dinner and other events that happened. Now, of course, the Reliance Industries chairman, Mukesh Ambani, and his wife, who is Nita Ambani, and she runs the foundational part of their conglomerates and their businesses and their philanthropy. Now, first and foremost, whoever took this picture, I think, should be shot. But that's just coming as a videographer and photographer. I just think that's got to be the worst photo of billionaires and the next president of the United States. It looks like somebody had a 1980s cell phone or something, maybe 90s, But regardless, the power couple has made it to the list. They had a private sitting with Donald Trump, and they're talking about another $10 billion potentially of India trade coming directly into the U.S. for things such as energy and data management facilities, as well as other developments. Now, this, though, should be approached with caution because it actually comes with various hooks and various leverage there because of the fact that it is not through them themselves. They're actually speaking on behalf of Mr. Adani of the Adani Group. Now, they want to come in and not only increase the trade and the investment in U.S. energy infrastructure and projects, but they also want to partner up with a company called Edge Connects to build these data management systems and both in India as well as in the US. And these are hyperscale data centers that are just off the charts in terms of their capacity for holding data and securing it for corporations, governments, and individual cloud services around the globe. Now, again, this is very interesting because, of course, we know the Adani Group has been mixed up with some of the allegations that are, I must emphasize, not proven in court at this time. But the Adanis are also billionaires in their own right, and they are essentially looking to have the indictments that were brought down on them from the South District Court in New York. And that had to do with, again, different corruption, bribery, fraud, securities fixing, price fixing, and manipulation. So again, the SEC wants to talk to them. There are warrants out. So we'll see how this plays out. We know that the federal prosecutor for the government of the United States has left his position just days prior to Trump's inauguration. So Trump will be not only able to possibly reach out and work some kind of a deal, but there's also going to be a new person in charge of the SEC, which also could play into favor for the Adanis. Now, this is a big coup for Trump if he can make it work, because again, this would give him an early start to his term with some major corporate money coming in from overseas to invest in the US. So this would also bring with it the potential of 15,000 jobs just in this one package alone. So again, it could be a big coup for Donald Trump to bring in jobs and billions of dollars of new investment, but we'll have to see. My personal opinion is that the Adani Group will probably be able to work some kind of a deal and negotiate a fine of some sort. Probably not a huge fine in comparison to their annual revenues, but something that is at least a token to basically deal with the allegations, deal with the charges, but at the same time, while being able to avoid admitting any actual liability. So I think this is, as I said, a big opportunity for Trump. I think it's an opportunity for India to move forward with their increased demand or their increased interest in foreign trade, not only with trade agreements of the U.S., but by doing this and getting those projects off the ground, I think that it'll open up more opportunities on a global scale with other countries for that. When we look at the only downside to that, or one of the major downsides, is of course the administration taking aim at TikTok when it comes to the use of data and the ability to use that app as a manipulating force of the U.S. public. Now, of course, they're looking at these major data centers in India and the U.S. that would be potentially controlled by different governments or different billionaires, and there might be security concerns there. I have no doubt that those concerns would be addressed and alleviated. So I think that, again, this could be a big opportunity for India and for the U.S. and Donald Trump to start his new term, Angus.
I think we've often talked about this new era being ushered in, even though this is Donald Trump's second term. I think the advantage he's got this time round is he's hitting the ground running, where the last time I don't think even he expected to win the election that he won that first time round. So there was an element of finding his feet, and also I think his team first time round, he wasn't quite as careful about the team that he selected, as was subsequently unveiled. This time round, though, he's been here before, he knows what he's doing, he knows what to expect, and this time he's built a much more powerful team around him, a much more loyal team around him. And of course, this time, what is very different and almost unique, no, it's not unique, but it's certainly very rare, he actually has total control, effectively, of the machine of government. He won the popular vote. He also they won the Supreme Court as well. So basically, he has an enormous, almost a dangerous amount of power now. Great for his agenda. Of course, for democracy, is it a good thing? We don't know. Time will tell. And as I said before, and I often said before he even became president first time round, I said he will either start World War III or be one of the best presidents in US history. So again, fortunately we're not at World War III yet, but I actually do have very positive feelings, and I've never made a secret that I am actually a bit of a Trump supporter, because I believe he gets things done. And I think the difference with Donald Trump, as I've said before, he is a businessman, he's not a politician. And quite often, and I think this affects democratic governance around the whole world, is that quite often, and certainly in recent decades, and certainly here in the UK, is we've ended up with career politicians. These are people who have ended up in government who have no background in actual real life. They're not business people. They haven't run businesses. They haven't even actually had proper jobs in many cases. They've literally come from university or wherever and gone into politics, and they've gone up that political hierarchy up to the positions they hold. Donald Trump isn't that. Donald Trump is a businessman. He's had a very, very successful career with a lot of ups and downs prior, but he's used to dealing. He's used to doing deals, getting things done. And the difference with a businessman is that they are judged by the results. They are judged by their profitability, their ability to create, to produce and get results, create profitability. Alternatively, when we've had, for example, lawyers who've become politicians and become prime ministers, and by that I'm now looking at Tony Blair and Keir Starmer, who've become probably the most unpopular and I would argue some of the most unsuccessful or most damaging politicians that certainly we've had here in the UK. They're lawyers. The difference, of course, with lawyers, like career politicians, is their whole life has been around understanding human nature and manipulating it. Their whole ethos is about winning arguments. That's where they come from. They're not deal makers. They're not creators. Their whole careers have been built around essentially winning arguments. And to do that, you need to understand human nature as best you can and be able to manipulate human nature and human psychology to win those arguments. That's why they make bad politicians or bad governors and bad prime ministers or presidents, whatever, is because they come from the wrong sort of background. Whereas Donald Trump comes from a very practical, very pragmatic background, which is deal making, business deals, creating stuff, creating wealth, creating success and producing results. So when we look at India, and we look at the trade deficit between India and the US, it's something like, I think, $190 odd billion. And the balance actually is that India is by far the beneficial party of this relationship. There's something like, I think I wrote it down, $118 billion a year goes into India from the US. So the US is buying $118 billion worth of Indian goods and services, whereas the other way around, it's $73 billion. In other words, there's only $73 billion flown back to India from the US. So there is a big deficit there, which means that actually India has an awful lot to lose and America has a lot to gain. And it means essentially through that trade balance is that actually Donald Trump once again is in quite a powerful position, because if he imposes tariffs, that enormous trade deficit that benefits India could suddenly disappear overnight, and India is in a real problem. That puts Narendra Modi and his eventual successors in a real sticky situation. So I think India is entering this relationship probably very much on the back foot, or very much in the subservient position. In other words, they are trying to get on the right side of Donald Trump, which is great for Donald Trump. But Donald Trump Trump will know this because he will use that, of course, as a businessman. He will use this and he will leverage this to his advantage. So that's all about the money, the deal making. And I think, and as you talked about at great length there, James, this is all about money. This is all about deal making. It's all about, for example, the Adani Group. Yeah, Trump wants India's money. Of course he does. He wants the Adanis and all the other Indian billionaires, like the Reliance Industries. He wants their money to invest in the US because it's direct investment. It's only going to benefit the US economy. Alternatively, what does he feel about human rights issues and the ongoing transnational oppression, all the issues that we talk about on a daily basis? Well, sadly, I think I do sense that his priorities will, of course, be America first. And by America first, I think we're looking at dollars. I think it's dollars first, and then everything else becomes second. But having said that, if he feels that those, if he can use the human rights issues to his advantage to get a better deal, he will. And this is why I think, pragmatically, I think the whole human rights thing and the transnational repression thing will actually come into play, because I think he will use that as a bargaining chip with India. I think when he sits down with, or his representatives sit down with their Indian counterparts, they will bring this up in those discussions and say, look, if you want to spend your money in the US, if you want our money in India, you're going to have to do something about these issues, because, well, otherwise we can't make them go away, and we will highlight to the world what you're up to in India. So I think it's going to be to a major disadvantage to India, the fact that what they've been up to and their oppression of human rights and the minorities. I think this is going to damage India's ability and their strength in these negotiations. So will it actually benefit ultimately the Sikh community? Will it benefit the diaspora? Oh, who knows? It's very hard to predict. I think on balance it probably will, and I think Donald Trump will bring a lot of good to the whole relationship with India. Now, will it lead to, I suppose, areas that we look at in more detail? Will it lead to the breakup of India? I don't know. Would the breakup of India benefit the US? I don't know. It swings and roundabouts, there are arguments, pros and cons. I don't know. So in other words, would the US administration, would they find it in their interest to push behind the scenes a breakup of India? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they would see it India as better as being one. Unless a better alternative could be put on the table. Now, we've often argued that Khalistan is a better alternative. Khalistan offers that foothold, that beachhead in the Indian subcontinent should China become a bigger problem. That's the selling point. I think that's the little crack in India's armour that the Khalistan movement needs to exploit now. That's what they need to sell to the US government and the whole Khalistan movement, saying, look, India as it stands does have these problems. It is not perfect. It has problems, and it has this increasing alignment with Russia and China, etc. But we offer, Khalistan offers you a better alternative. Albeit it's a small nation geographically, it doesn't matter. It's still a nation upon which, for example, you can place American troops, American military material. It gives you that access, close access to the region. It means, for argument's sake, you could also locate nuclear weapons in Khalistan. You could put US nuclear weapons in Khalistan, which means that China, Pakistan, India, the Middle East, all these areas around that area that surround Khalistan, they are within reach of smaller nuclear weapons, more tactical nuclear weapons. So all those discussions, I'm sure the strategic discussions always happen behind the scenes, but these are the sorts of elements that the Khalistan movement will need to sell to the Trump administration if they're going to get Trump to get on side with the whole Khalistan movement. So yeah, James, very interesting times. I'm very excited, very nervous, very what on earth are the next 4 years going to bring? Like I said before, and I will repeat it, I think once again Donald Trump will either start World War III, or I think he will be one of the best presidents in US history. Only the next 4 years will tell.
Well, and as our viewers know, I'm not a big fan of Trump. I don't have the confidence in him that you do. That's no secret. But at the end of the day, as a journalist, I want to make sure that I'm fair and accurate in what I report and bringing the truth out. And yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting. There are rumors that his first overseas trips will be India and China. So I think that there's definitely a big push for him personally and for his administration to expand trade, but also to try and work past these issues that are causing the concern of tariffs. So we'll see how it plays.
Indeed, and the reason I'm excited is not so much because I'm such a supporter of Trump. And I'm not a massive supporter, but I'm excited because the reason is he gets things done. He brings about change, because I'm tired of politicians and the infection of the sort of the lawyer politician that we've had here in the West, certainly here in the UK, that have damaged politics and created this enormous disjoint between the people and the government. That's never healthy. And the reason I think Donald Trump is exciting is because he gets things done. He changes things. He's given the political establishment an absolute kicking up the backside, and that's what it's needed. The political establishment has needed to realise that it is answerable to the people, not to the ruling elite, the cabal of whoever it is that like to think they control and run the world. It's the people who should actually be running the world. The people through their democratic elected representatives. That's what we've lost in the Western world, and I think Donald Trump is bringing us a little bit step closer back to what democracy really should be about. Whether he's good or bad, I think the fact is he's not a politician. He is a person elected, and he's trying to enact what he's been elected for. And this is, again, I think he's talked so much about what he's going to achieve literally on his first day. I think this week, even this week, James, we will see an awful lot happening, an awful lot of announcements, again, because he's going to hit the ground running. I think immediately, he's already planned huge things. What those things are, I don't know. And I think, again, this is why I'm excited, because I think he wants to impress. He wants to have that massive impact. It's all about the ego. It's all about the optics. It's all about the impact. So it's Donald Trump to a T that big things will happen quickly, James. That's why I'm excited.
All I know is that the 51st state of Canada won't be one of those.
Well, who knows? All I would say, James, is to keep an eye out for the tanks on the border.
Too funny.
Right. Anyway, on that note, let's move on to my first story. Let's zip all the way across into the eastern hemisphere of the globe, and let's take a look at Punjab. And we've talked a lot about the films, these two films that have actually been released recently. There's Emergency and Punjab 95. Now, of course, Emergency is this film that was all about the life of Indira Gandhi. Starring this young starlet, this Hindutva mentor, basically, this young girl who's always spouting anti-Sikh, anti-khalistan rhetoric across social media and every opportunity she gets. She has become the star of this film Emergency, which is about the life of Indira Gandhi. But also, around about the same time, we talked about Punjab 95, this story essentially covering the life of Singh Kalra, the human rights activist who was eventually abducted and murdered, tortured and murdered by the Indian state, once again for highlighting the illegal activities and the extrajudicial killings that went on in the Punjab. So two big films, two quite different stories. Now, I'm just going to quickly just paraphrase an article that's appeared on Satellite TV News, which actually analyses quite a lot of what's going on, and then I'll follow this up with a lot of the reaction that's going on around the world, and particularly here in the UK, to these various films. Now, there has been, of course, stiff opposition from the Sikh community and other sections of society when the Indian government gave a nod to the release of this film Emergency, which, as they say, not only distorts history, but also shows the Sikh community in a poor light. Now, Emergency was released just 2 or 3 days ago, January the 17th, across the Indian Union. But, of course, unsurprisingly, in the Punjab, resistance was massive. Boycotts have been right across the state, especially, obviously, of course, from the Sikh community. And they've done their best to not allow the screening of this movie across the cinemas across the Punjab. Now, a day before its release, the SGPC president, Harjinder Singh Dhami, wrote a letter to Punjab's Chief Minister, Bhagwant Mann, asking for a ban, saying, look, you've got to ban this movie. It so misrepresents the truth, and it's so pro this legacy, this fake legacy of Indira Gandhi, that it should be banned. And of course, it's spreading hatred and division across the communities. But the Chief Minister, who essentially works under the diktats of the Indian state, didn't even answer, gave no response to this letter to the SGPC, which I think in itself speaks volumes. But on the day of its release, members of the Sikh nation gathered outside cinemas to protest against the movie. Bowing before the anger of the community, the administration and managers of the cinemas had to decide not to screen the movie, a biographical political thriller that delves, as it says in this article, into the former life of Indira Gandhi. So it does seem that the boycott has worked across the Punjab to a large extent, and that many cinemas have refused to show the film as a result of these boycotts. It was, of course, earlier scheduled back last year, September the 6th, it was due to be released. But it didn't get clearance from the Indian Censor Board, also known as the Central Board of Film Certification, otherwise a CBFC, after Sikhs and some other community members stood up and raised massive objections to the film. And indeed, it was reported in the Indian media at the time. And they reported that the CBFC cleared it after the makers did agree to modify parts of the film and delete various scenes within the film. However, ultimately, it was reported as a bit of a whitewash on the part of the Indian Censor Board. First of all, the Sikh community wasn't consulted in any way, really, about the film and what was depicted in the film. And Kangana Ranaut, a lady that we've often talked about on this channel, who is labelled here, but we know is basically a Hindu extremist actress. And she was, of course, the director of the movie. And she was involved in the actual production and funding it and everything and seeking funding for it. So she basically she was behind this film and she starred in it in the key role. But she was, of course, consulted regularly by the Film Censor Board in deciding whether to delete the what they call the objectionable and hateful scenes. Ultimately, nobody actually knows what cuts were suggested by the board. Before its release, the movie wasn't shown to any Sikh bodies, so they didn't know. And makers of the movie didn't make any official statements about the deletion of these scenes. So again, all very non-transparent, very opaque process. And it's believed that Sikhs were deliberately misled by the Indian board. And unfortunately, the film, as we know, it does show Sikhs as terrorists, and this, unsurprisingly, has deeply offended the community. It shows an actor playing the role of Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, and as we've reported, and as we know widely, you cannot depict shaheeds, martyrs, of the Sikh community by human actors. It is seen as a deep insult to those shaheeds. And of course, in the film, they have an actor playing Bhindranwale, who was actually awarded the title of a great Sikh of the 20th century by the Akal Takht Sahib, of course, the Akal Takht, the highest temporal seat of the Sikh community. And Bhindranwale, he is an enormous figure in the history, the recent history of the Sikh community. And of course, throughout, he met his fate, his heroic fate, in the siege of the Golden Temple in 1984. And so, of course, as a result of that, his portrait hangs in every Gurdwara around the world. He is revered by the community for not just the heroic stand he held in 1984 against this enormous wave of oppression by the Indian state, but of course what led up to that. He was leading a powerful movement that was demanding, actually, ironically, not khalistan, it was actually just demanding basic human rights, basic autonomy for the Sikh community at that time, after the Anandpur resolution, which again was a resolution that occurred a few years before that, just setting out basic rights. It was even things like irrigation. We just want access to our own water, our riparian rights, as it's called. So there was a huge background behind Bhindranwale, and he was portrayed in this film, firstly, offensively by an actor, which in itself is a deep offence to the Sikh community, but of course a completely different portrayal to the truth. Of course, his portrayal was not benign. It didn't portray the reality of what Bhindranwale stood for. Yes, we've been here before. So let's move on then, of course, then to this other film, which we talked about just last week, the Punjab 1985. So at the same time, of course, Diljit Singh Dosanjh's movie, Punjab 95, has hit the headlines around about the same time. Now, interestingly, and this actually, this changes what we reported last week, and I didn't know this, I think this has come out since. So after it was actually denied clearance by the CBFC, the censor board, the movie is now not being released in India. According to reports now this week, and indeed by Diljit Dosanjh himself, he announced that there will be a global release of this film on February the 7th, but it will not be screened in India. So on X, Twitter, along with a clip from the film, he shared a caption that read, "Punjab 95 releases in cinemas internationally only on the 7th of February. P.S. Full movie, no cuts." How interesting. So, according to Diljit Dosanjh, the film is not going to be released in India with all the cuts that the censor board demanded. It's actually going to be released in its original form globally instead. The movie, as we reported, is a biopic on human rights activist Shahid Jaswant Singh Kalra, who brought the truth out of the genocide of the Sikhs in the Punjab across the 1980s and the 1990s. And so it was scheduled to be released a lot earlier. However, the approach of the Indian state and its agencies, including the censor board, towards the movie was very different because, of course, it sheds light on the atrocities and the brutalities committed on the Sikhs throughout that period under a pretty brutal regime of Indira Gandhi and then her successors across the 1980s and the 1990s after her assassination. And in September last year, the censor board proposed up to 120 cuts in the movie. It also asked, and we reported this at the time, it asked to rename the lead character, Singh Kalra's character. I mean, the film was about Singh Kalra. It was about what he was campaigning about. So they actually demanded, I mean, this is an outrage in itself. They said you can't have the main character called Singh Kalra. You've got to call him something else, which makes a mockery of the whole film. And they also asked the makers, Honey Trian and Ronnie Screwvala, if I pronounce it correctly, to drop even the title Punjab 95 as the film's name, a reference to the year that Kalra was, well, it says here he died. I'll rephrase that. The year that Kalra was murdered, was abducted by the police, he was tortured and he was murdered. And actually, thank you to our commenter the other day, last week, who actually said the original title was Gulagara, I think it was called, which actually means genocide. But it was changed to Punjab 95 because, again, that was seen as too contentious. But even then, the censor board demanded they change it from Punjab 95 to something else. But they have kept it as Punjab 95. So, and the board dictated that the movie cannot be claimed to be based on real-life incidents because they're running scared. They don't want the truth to be revealed through a movie. It also mentions of Punjab and the district of Tarn Taran are to be dropped because that's of course where it all happened, along with any reference to the national flag of India, Canada or the UK. Again, they are running scared. They're terrified about what is actually the reality of it, what's going on. It was of course a grave injustice to the film. The family of Jaswant Singh Kalra actually wrote to the filmmakers themselves, urging them not to make any modifications as they pleaded, look, please don't modify this film. This film must depict the truth. That's the whole purpose of the film. But they failed in this. Of course, the censor board ignored it, and its makers finally decided, therefore, to release it across the world, except in India, in its original form and without any cuts, on February the 7th. And an independent journalist, Gershamshir Singh, said on X, as per director Honey Trian, movie is based on court judgments in the Kalra case, so is part of legal history of India. But why does the censor board in the BJP rule have blocked the movie on HR abuses, human rights abuses, committed under Congress rule? And on the directions of the Indian government, the teaser of this movie has been removed from YouTube in India. Yeah, once again, the Indian government censoring what can be found on YouTube.
That's right.
So it's this is fascinating, and actually, is this true? And I'm treating this seems to be corroborated across social media. It does seem that in reality, this film is going to be released around the world, as we've been saying, James, as we've been saying it should be. Why don't they release it uncut around the world? Yeah, it's going to get banned in India. Well, it seems, I don't think they'll be listening to us, but it does seem they have taken the honourable course. And I'm hesitant to say this until we actually see the film and people report, yes, it's genuine, or is this part of a big marketing ploy? I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, but of course, Diljit Dosanjh, who's been heavily involved in this, we talked a lot about Diljit Dosanjh recently, and we even showed footage of Diljit Dosanjh embracing Narendra Modi, shaking hands with Narendra Modi, having this awfully this squirmingly cringeworthy sit down with Narendra Modi where they're both mutually saying how wonderful each other is. And again, it sits very uncomfortably with, well, what Punjab 95 was supposed to be about, because Narendra Modi, as we've reported on, is essentially one of the great oppressors of the Sikh community and what's going on in the Punjab. So basically, Narendra Modi, by implication, is not just supportive of banning the truth coming out. He is actually part and complicit on behalf of the Indian state against this overall agenda, which has spanned the decade since 1947. He's part and parcel of that Indira Gandhi was likewise a part of it. So now I'm going to move on now to, of course, everything that we've reported about that. So as these films are being released, and particularly, and I'll go back to Emergency particularly, and how they've been treated by the censor board. Of course, we have, on the one hand, we've got Punjab 95, which has been butchered by the censor board. In other words, you will comply to the censor board's diktats, which of course, by extension, is the Indian state, or you're not going to get released. As simple as that. Compare that to Emergency, where of course we've got Kangana Ranaut, an Hindutva activist, very pro-Hindutva, very pro-RSS mouthpiece. Her film, which of course portrays a completely false image of Indira Gandhi, very pro-Modi, very pro-Indian state, very pro-Brahmin, pro-RSS. Of course, it has a breeze through the censor board. No problem at all. Yes, of course, we'll pass it and release it across India. Reaction, of course, unsurprisingly, has been across the Punjab boycotts. Basically, anything that Kangana Ranaut releases always, almost by default, gets boycotted by the Sikh community in the Punjab. Who can blame them? Well, interestingly, and I'm delighted to report, the diaspora has been equally active. Let me quickly play actually one video for you, just hitting social media. Yep, there we go. 17th of January, the release of Emergency across the UK. And the Sikh army have gone on social media in a very big way, saying they've been getting the troops out, metaphorically speaking. They're getting the community out. You get out there, boycott. And they have been protesting at cinemas right across the UK from the 17th, the release date of this film Emergency. And of course, we've seen dozens of demonstrations. For example, I'm just reading here through some of these. Dozens will attend a demonstration at Feltham Cinema World tomorrow, and some demonstrating at showings today. This is actually on the 17th of January. So Feltham is just outside London. So again, big demonstrations there to boycott it. Of course, another huge area for the Sikh diaspora here in the UK is Birmingham, where I was at 2 weeks ago. A big protest at Star City View Cinema in Birmingham saw the opening night showing of Emergency cancelled yesterday. The film, as it says in their press release, the film is viewed as an anti-Sikh Indian state propaganda for its depiction of ex-PM Indira Gandhi's role in the Sikh genocide. More protests will take place today. And it says the Sikh Sangat in London has successfully shut down the controversial film Emergency in Harrow, Feltham, Hounslow and other locations. They're all locations just sitting around London and the outskirts of London. We will not tolerate any Nindya or Beadbi, that's sacrilegious crimes, against Sant Jarnail Singh Khalsa Bandranwale, our Shahid Singhs and Bibian or the Khalistan movement. Our unity is our strength. We stand together to protect the honour of our Sikhi and our Shaheeds. And again, another video. Look, this is outside the View Cinema in Birmingham. Look at this one. So I feel a bit sorry for the manager there. I think he was a little bit bemused by the storm. All he's done is just releasing a film. He doesn't understand the nuances and the complexities and the controversies involved in it. Right. But I have to say, well done to the community up in Birmingham once again. Of course, a huge activist community in the Midlands here in the UK. Well done to them. They got out there and they've basically shut that showing down. So again, Emergency has been successfully boycotted across cinemas in London, the Midlands here in the UK, and I think the overall message here is well done to the community for getting out there, and I think is beholden on the communities around the world, certainly in North America, James, Canada and the US. I have no doubt that the activists and campaigners, as soon as Emergency appears in any cinemas in your parts of your side of the Atlantic, I dare say they will be out likewise. And I'm just quickly looking through again on Instagram, for example. Loads and loads of the big Instagram accounts of the Sikh community have been very, very vocal about this. They're talking about a lot about the film and getting out there. We must speak up, challenge this narrative, ensuring our shades are not falsely portrayed. We have never had an actor portray Sant Janel Singh Ji Kalsabindra Vali because of Satkar. Why are we allowing Bollywood to? This film will put Sikhs in the crosshairs of Indian nationalists, where we have Sikh activists already being targeted for assassinations by the Indian government overseas. Again, referring to Emergency and Punjab 95. And then in one of the announcements says, listed are the contact details for the cinemas in Birmingham, UK showing viewings. We need everyone collectively now to stop this film from being shown. Muslims protested in Birmingham to stop the Kerala story from being shown in 2023. We need to show India our response. And he says, today our Sevadar received a phone call from Ryan, the general manager of View Cinema Star City, and that's the poor chap portrayed in that video, confirming that following a meeting with their head office this morning, the movie Emergency, featuring failed actress Kangana Ranaut, has been permanently removed from their schedule. We extend our gratitude to Ryan for his cooperation and for offering the opportunity to preview films prior to their release to address any concerns about potential offence to Sikh sentiments. This sends a clear message to India that propaganda through the arts will not be tolerated or accepted in Birmingham. The action taken last night has set a precedent, leading to further cancellations in Wolverhampton today. We encourage Sikhs in their respective areas to take similar steps and ensure such screenings are stopped. Well done to the Sikh community once again here in the UK, a fabulously powerful community. I had the honour and the privilege of meeting many members of that community about 10 days ago. They are so passionate, they are so active, they get out there, doesn't matter what the weather, and it was certainly very, very cold when I was out there the other day for Deepa Singh's sentencing, and when I met these guys, they don't care, they're out there, they are so motivated, they are so passionate about ensuring that their community will not be oppressed. And again, through this, they've just proven once again that activism on the ground, this grassroots activism, James, really works. It does have an impact, and it looks like Emergency has been boycotted, and therefore all its showings are going to be closed down right across the UK, which is fabulous news. Sends a very powerful message, not just back to Kangana Ranaut, because at the end of the day I don't think she cares, but ultimately it's back to India, but also to the global audience. People are saying, why is this film so offensive? Why is it being banned? Why are all these people boycotting it? They're asking the questions, James. Again, this is what it's all about, educating the wider population. Why are people boycotting this film? What is so offensive about it is because the Sikh community has been oppressed, persecuted, has been murdered, has had genocides perpetrated against it for decades. That's what it's all about. These are the messages. This is the publicity that's getting out there. Not these silly little nonsense pieces of propaganda. It's the wider message. Sikhs have endured genocides from India. That's the message that's getting out there, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And when it comes to Punjab 95, it's very interesting to look at the fact that they have decided to go with an international release. most people that don't work within the film industry don't understand the ins and outs of the major impact that government tax incentives can have, different other incentives and grants that governments can have, as well as by circumventing the censor board in India, it can definitely have retaliatory actions towards future films by those filmmakers or anyone associated with the project. So I think it definitely stands as a sign of bravery and dedication to the craft and the story for them to make that change, or to make that release international outside of India. And when it comes to looking at censor boards, they want, just sometimes it's the most ridiculous concessions, such as name changes. I mean, one day we'll have a censor board that wants you to change, a biography on Donald Trump to call it the pre and post president of Joe Biden. It's just silly about how they look at certain things. But again, it just shows the bravery and the commitment to the craft for those individuals to make that international release, Angus. I'm glad to see it. And then in terms of the other film, I'm very proud of seeing the Sikh community stand up and protest and make sure that their voices are heard, and to bring further awareness of the issues at hand.
Indeed, absolutely. And I do reserve absolute judgment on the Punjab 95 situation until we know for a fact that the film is released, it is truthful, it is what we hope it will be, a genuine biopic of Singh Kalra. And if it is like that, then I absolutely will stand up and applaud the filmmakers for releasing it globally and doing the honourable, principled thing. So we'll wait, and we will, as soon as reports come back to us and we can corroborate those reports that it is what we hope it to be, then fantastic, and we will salute those filmmakers and give them the credit that they would then justify. So on that note, James, let us move on to our comments, and I did a very interesting podcast last week with Dr. Singh Grewal. And we talked about what he calls the religious apartheid that is existing in India. And I think it's almost without dispute that basically has been a growing religious apartheid that has taken grip of India. And essentially, it's just a fancy way of saying that there is Hindu imperialism, that Hindus are trying to divide the communities and they're treating their religious minorities as second-class citizens. So essentially, that is what the religious apartheid is all about. And he set out all sorts of evidence that does actually strongly support the fact that there is this religious apartheid occurring. And what was actually most fascinating, that the one fact I took from this discussion with Dr. Grewal, and it happened early on. Do watch this discussion. He actually showed or talked about a letter that was written back in 1928 by a gentleman called Puran Singh. And Puran Singh warned the leaders of the British Empire at the time and the governance of India, the British governance. And he said, look, this growing Hindu imperialism will lead to the inevitable breakup of India, because this Hindu imperialism is deliberately dividing the communities by religion. So the Sikhs, the Christians, the Buddhists, etc., they're all being divided up. The Jains, likewise, they're being divided up, segregated almost. Again, apartheid. They are being segregated by their religious denomination. And if you do that, it will inevitably lead to a breakup of that coalition, of that country that is India at the time, that is now modern-day India. So even back as far as 1928, even the clever, the academic observers, commentators were saying that this Hindu imperialism is going to lead to the breakup of India. Well, where are we now? Yes, we are looking at, once again, massive Hindu imperialism, this 80% majority Hindu population of India being driven by this RSS Hindutva agenda, this religious apartheid that is oppressing the minority communities, the Sikhs, the Christians, etc., and the Muslims. They are leading to the potential breakup of India. So that's the big message that came out of that podcast. I've just gone on that because I want to remind people about about what was said in that podcast. Do watch that podcast, because that, to me, is one, and it was something that I learned in that podcast. I think that is a massive, massive piece of information that I didn't know about, and I'm sure much of our audience didn't know about, that it was predicted as far back as then, what the inevitable outcome would be. And here we are, we're heading down that road. So anyway, but so whilst I divert down that, let's get back to TC's comment here. It says, thanks, well, thank you for the comment. Sat Sri Akal to you too. Dr. Greywell explained it very well. Divisive man-made artificial constructs are not compliant with the tenets of Sikhi. And the Sikhi is all about equality. It's about bringing people together. These divisions have been catastrophic for human rights and self-determination. Khalistan Zindabad. Yeah, and James, actually, really, what the reason I prefaced with all that, what I was saying, is that it is these divisions that will be catastrophic, not just for human rights, but it will be catastrophic for India as a nation, which is why inevitably it will lead to a breakup.
Absolutely. I mean, to put it in the simplest possible terms for everybody to understand is, try to tell your teenager not to do something that they can't do it, they're prohibited, and put restrictions on it, and watch how well that goes for you.
Absolutely right. Again, it comes down to human nature. You cannot, it doesn't matter what you do, what laws, regulations, anything you impose, you cannot change human nature. That's it. It's an immutable fact. And ultimately, as Puran Singh actually pointed out in his letter that he wrote in 1928, if you artificially pull together different cultural identities, but they all remain non-integrated, it will inevitably, it's an artificial construct, and therefore it is only a matter of time before it breaks up. So that, again, it's all down to human nature. If you keep people in their tribes, they will break apart. That is human nature. It is immutable. So next comment's an interesting one. Guru stock investing. The demographics of Punjab are changing. Soon, 60 to 70% may follow Jesus and others will become Christians. And we will protect our country from your agenda. Pray to the Lord. And Vinnie Chorn jumps in and says, spoken like a real Punjabi Indian. Well, okay, this comment is basically saying, look, the Christian faith is growing into a majority soon in the Punjab. And it's the Christians who will protect our country from your agenda. Pray to the Lord. I mean, you can interpret this comment in all sorts of ways, whether in a good way or a bad way. But I would say, sadly, and I've come from a Christian context. Of course, the UK is a Christian nation by its default religion. And I think one of the disappointments of Christianity, and it's the same actually with many other mainstream religions, is they exist to spread their religion. They exist to convert almost, and certainly historically by force, they exist to almost forcefully recruit people into their religions. And quite often that's not in a very benign way. Often it's been done by force, less so by force these days, but it's certainly by seductive techniques, etc., etc. The difference of Sikhi, and this is one of the huge attractions about Sikhi as a religion, is that it does not do that. As a principle, it does not go out there to try to convert people to Sikhism. What it does, and it says this very clearly in the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, I believe, and I'm sure my audience will correct me if I'm wrong here, it actually says, we exist to make Christians better Christians. We exist to make Muslims better Muslims. We exist to make Hindus better Hindus. In other words, it's not about trying to convert people through force, coercion, seduction, whatever. It's about trying to make them better human beings. That is what a religion should be. Whatever you want to call your religion, that is what a religion should be. And unfortunately, this comment actually sits very uncomfortably with that. It's basically what it's saying. The subtext of this agenda, James, in my opinion, is saying, look, Christians are taking over the Punjab and we're going to basically drive you out. That is religious apartheid. That is religious imperialism. That is saying we're going to drive you out, drive out your agenda. So what you're saying is we're driving out an agenda that's trying to unite people, that's trying to integrate all faiths into one. You're actually saying, no, we are going to dominate. We're going to drive everybody else out. The Muslims, we're going to drive out the Hindus. We're going to drive out the Sikhs. That is what the Hindus have been threatening. Now, as a Christian, that's what you're saying. So, James, I think I can't find a good way of interpreting this one. And that's even coming from a Christian context.
Well, it reminds me of that old joke that the guy passes away and goes up to heaven, and he's standing there speaking with one of the gatekeepers, and he says, okay, so over there we have the Jews, over there we have the Hindus, over there we have the Sikhs. Everybody gets together. There, it's just beautiful. And the guy looks and says, well, what about this big wall over there? He says, don't worry. He says, the Christians are on the other side. They're convinced they should be the only ones here.
Exactly, and I'm always the first one to stand out and really call out any religious, what's the word I'm looking for? Dominance, arrogance, we are the one, we are the only one. And again, this is where Sikhi, I just find so, as a religion, is so appealing, is because of its tolerance. It tolerates, it doesn't just tolerate, it encourages other religions. That's the difference between Sikhi and all these other religions. It's the only one I've encountered that actually encourages other religions, as opposed to the opposite, which is trying to destroy other religions and convert people. So anyway, but Guru Stock Investing, thank you for your comment. I mean, obviously, it's freedom of speech. If that is your opinion, that is your opinion. We deeply disagree with it. But anyway, thank you. Akash Deep Singh. This is an interesting one. Thanks for the great work. Well, thank you for your comment and services to all Khalistan and the truth. Well, it's an absolute honour, as we've said. Now, you have a question regarding Bhai Amritpal Singh, his father, and Sarabjit Singh Khalsa and their new political party. This is, of course, Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day, is what it's called. Can they and their party be part of India's plan and India's narrative to make sure the Sikhs would not go to vote for Khalistan in the referendum? In my opinion, I suggest to all Sikhs to believe and vote only for Khalistan, the referendum, only vote in the Khalistan referendum, to recognise satellite politics, Punjab, US media international as our Khalistanis media. I think the comment, I think this ties in with a comment I saw somewhere else as well, where, and I haven't put it up here, I don't think I can find it again, where somebody said, look, Tarsem Singh, Amritpal's father, and Sarabjit Singh Khalsa don't actually believe in Khalistan, or they're not campaigning for the Khalistan movement. Right. I don't know for a fact, and I've actually been unable to find this. They haven't released a clear manifesto yet. They've talked about the issues that they will cover, and of course it's the issues like the drug problem, etc., which of course are the prevailing dominant social issues that they must campaign on. They are actually the priorities. Khalistan at the moment is not, should we say, the priority, because ultimately what people care about is putting food on their plates and keeping a roof over their heads and not being murdered extrajudicially by the Indian state. That's what they're currently worried about. The Khalistan thing is a separate issue. That is a bigger picture issue, and that's what the referendum's all about. But the question here is this political party standing on a pro-Khalistan ticket? I, by default, assume it is, because, of course, Amritpal Singh campaigned very openly about Khalistan, and he is president of this party. But is the party itself publicly, as a priority, campaigning as a pro-Khalistan party? As yet, I don't think they've even made that clear. They haven't. I don't think they've said we are against Khalistan. They've not said we're against Khalistan, unless anybody can point to that. Please do let me know, either in the comments or email us directly a link to any evidence. At the moment, I cannot find any evidence on this party's official stance on Khalistan. Ultimately, of course, I would guess that most of its supporters are pro-Khalistan, of course, being Punjabi Sikhs. I suspect they are pro-Khalistan. Amritpal Singh, we know, is pro-Khalistan. Is his father anti-Khalistan? I'd be awfully surprised if he is, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. I don't know is the answer. The other argument that somebody else has posited is, are they controlled opposition? And we do know that there are Sikhs in the community, even the Khalistan movement, who are deeply suspicious about Amritpal Singh. I've spoken to a few of them myself, who are suspicious about Amritpal Singh's own motives and motivations. Is he really pro-Khalistan, or is he controlled opposition, as some people have said? I don't know. We can only judge by results. All we can do is report what we see and hear and leave it up to those pushing these movements. Of course, we are pro-Khalistan. We will do everything we can to push the Khalistan agenda forward. But ultimately, we stand for the truth. That's all we can do, James. So, yeah, I don't know is the answer, James. I think we're just going to have to keep digging and trying to find out the truth about this.
Absolutely. And again, once they put forward more of their public policy, their structure, and their direction, I think we'll have a clearer idea. But until then, we're kind of left just kind of assuming. And of course, at the end of the day, if they don't necessarily support khalistan in principle, but support the right for people to vote yes or no in a referendum, I think that also goes a long way as well.
Yeah, it's don't forget this party has been cobbled together very, very quickly. It takes an awful long time and a lot of resources and a lot of money to build a political party, to build the machinery to run a party, to operate it, administer it, and of course to recruit people to that party. So this has been put together very quickly. So they've had to obviously just come up with a list of policies very quickly, say this is what we stand for. I think time will tell when, of course, they assess the situation with the Khalistan movement, whether they publicly come out in support of it. But as I said at the time, this is a stepping stone. The Khalistan movement in the Punjab has to tread very, very carefully. This is why the Sikh Federation, both here in the UK, Canada, and all the other organisations that are springing up now for the Sikh Confederation, Sikh Federation, not Confederation, the Sikh Federation, they obviously are very pro-Khalistan, but they themselves have told me, the leadership have said to me, look, we have obviously representation in the Punjab, but they can't be public. They've got to keep below the radar because otherwise the government will come for them. Literally, they will be locked up for under the NSA or the UAPA, whatever, all this various legislation. They'll get locked up like Amritpal has been done. So ultimately, I suspect Shirmani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day, this new political party, is, as we say, keeping its powder dry. It's waiting until it's building the stepping stone. It's building a platform of power. It can't do that if the Indian state is after it. So it's building a platform of power. This is, I believe, what's going to happen. It is going to build that platform of power. It will get into a position where it is so powerful, it will have so much popular support that at that time it can then start being more vocal about Khalistan, because then it's too powerful for the Indian state to be able to tear it down. When it's young and vulnerable, it's very easy for the Indian state to basically lock up. It will just come around and lock up all these people, as the Indian state tends to do. When it doesn't like anybody, it'll just lock them up under the NSA. And these people then have gone. The leadership has done it in J&K. Exactly the same thing happened in J&K. The Indian state poured in 500,000 troops and locked up all the political leadership, the Islamic political leadership. That was it. Home arrested. They can't campaign. They can't do anything. That's it. And martial law effectively is been running J&K. That's what they'll do in the Punjab. Give them an excuse. The Indian state will do this. Sorry, I'm going on a bit now because we're running out of time. But this is what the Indian state are waiting to do in the Punjab. They're just waiting for the excuse to pour in 500,000 troops, to take control, to install martial law, to remove the Akal Tact, remove the SGPC, etc., etc. They want the excuse to do this. So this is why I think SAD Waris Punjab Day have to be very, very careful. I think this is what they're doing. They're building a platform of power first so that they get to a state where they are too powerful for the Indian state to do anything like that. That's my belief. That's where I think this is going, James. Who knows? Time will tell.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. We'll have to just watch and see where the chips fall.
Indeed. And of course, we will be following that very, very closely. Thank you for that comment anyway. Interesting comment. Bal Singh DN, something or other, says, Amritpal Singh's father, here's the comment. I did find it. Amritpal Singh's father and Sarabjit Singh Khalsa have separated themselves from the issue of Khalistan. They expressed full trust in the Indian constitution and misguiding Sikhs in the Punjab. But Minder Singh says, yes, he's playing with Sikhs, but you don't know the ground situation. Sikhs are caught up on both sides. In other words, actually, and I'll refer back to what I've just been saying, I think we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes because they have to keep below the radar. The truth of what's really going on behind the scenes cannot be revealed. It mustn't be known because we cannot gift the Indian state that knowledge, that intelligence, because otherwise they will just wade in with the law, the police, the army, and they'll destroy this green shoot that is growing and nurturing, that is basically the homegrown Khalistan movement. And I think it's likely that Tarsem Singh, Amritpal's father, is publicly distancing themselves. Sarwjit Singh Khalsa is probably doing this for their own self-preservation at this stage, to allow the movement to grow in strength. So that's my belief. So thank you, Bali Singh, for that comment, and Minder Singh for your follow-up. Danny Singh says 65% Sikh. Jameen sits in Pakistan, Punjab. 63% Sikh. Avadi left in 1947. So this slightly convoluted, complicated comment again refers to partition and the Sikhs, or the Punjab, being divided in 1947, East and West Punjab. Again, we don't have time, sadly, to go into this into more detail. It actually did spawn a long thread, lots and lots of comments, so I had to just literally pick a couple of comments here. Look, an awesome comes back and basically says, look, we didn't just have Punjab, as J&K, including Ladakh, were also partitioned back in 1846. This is the empire, the Sikh Empire. They were also essentially taken away from the Sikh Empire, but all those areas were part of the original Sikh Empire. But yeah, nonetheless, Sikhs are almost non-existent in West Punjab, that's on the Pakistan side, obviously because of partition. And the same reasons that Muslims are non-existent in East Punjab, because yeah, that's now in India. They all moved to the Islamic Pakistan, West Punjab. We first have to start with East Punjab, then work our way after. So in other words, again, I think this point is reiterating what we said. Look, you've got to start somewhere. There's no way in reality that Khalistan can also include West Punjab, Pakistan, because firstly, at the moment, it's still but vast majority Islamic, thanks to partition. But let's start with East Punjab. Let's start with Punjab as it is today in India. That's where we'll start. That's a stepping stone. It's all about stepping stones, James.
It is, and let Trump go to Greenland and leave Canada alone. It's all about taking off bites that you can chew.
It's all about stepping stones, James. So be careful.
Sorry if we have any fans in Greenland. I doubt we do, but sorry.
So you better watch your back door, James. Newfoundland may suddenly become the next part. It's going to get absorbed, and then he'll start moving west.
They wouldn't even notice in Newfoundland. just keep them drunk and they're happy.
I have to say, having worked in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, there's really not very much there apart from an awful lot of trees. So I think he's probably welcome to it anyway. So.
It's a beautiful place, though.
It is beautiful. There is that. Right, last page. We're way over time. Human says, Trump to India. You've given enough territory to China. Stop killing Sikhs and give them their homeland. Then we'll talk. Yep, absolutely. This is all about doing business. I think Trump will enter this negotiation basically as the stronger party in this, as we talked about earlier in the show. I think you're absolutely right on the dynamics of that situation. Affordability then follows up by saying, free all India-occupied lands now. Absolutely. I think that's what the Khalistan movement is all about. And of course, it's not just about Khalistan. It is about J&K. It's about Tamil Nadu. It's about Manipur. It's about all these other areas of India that actually are now, they're all elbowing for room. Those stitches around the seams that have been artificially stitched in, I think they're breaking apart, James.
Absolutely, and you just got to kind of watch and see how it happens. I think that one of the issues that's going to be first and foremost is that I think that there's going to be certain overlooking of the situation in India because there's so many other hotspots in the world right now that Trump wants to get his administration involved in to try and get some peace going and some stability around the world. So.
Indeed. And to wrap up the, very long show today, Inderjit Beans says, thank you again for a wonderful coverage. When you come to Khalistan, you'll not only have a meal, having given the hunger strikers much needed glorious tribute, but you will also receive the honour of the Saropa. And I had to look at what a Saropa, increasing my vocabulary of Punjabi, James. Here's a new one for us. The Saropa in Sikh culture apparently is a robe of honour. So thank you, Inderjit Baines, who suggests that we will receive our robes of honour, our Saropas, for our sincere, dedicated support for Khalistan. Keep it up. Indeed we will, James.
It's going to take a lot of material to make a robe for this guy, but hey, I'm in on it.
And indeed, and we will wear that with pride as we lap up our first meal in independent Khalistan, and we very much look forward to that day. And indeed, Khalistan Zindabad, absolutely. But unfortunately there, we must wrap up. We're way over time as usual. Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. Do keep those comments coming in. Thank you so much for the wonderful comments. I had some cracking comments in, so do keep them coming. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com. If there's anything you'd like to talk to us directly about, so please do keep that information coming in. Very vital to keep us going. But in the meantime, we'll wrap up Perspectives for another day. Thank you so much for watching. It's a goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.